One of the scariest parts about losing your job is that settlement package. How do you know if you're being treated fairly? How do you know if it's good? How do you know if it's bad? Hilda Gan has been in HR for 25 years. She is an expert in this field, and she has agreed generously to share her expertise with us. She now runs a company that helps small businesses with HR, among many other things. Hilda, thank you very much for joining us. What can people expect in a fair package?
So I think people have a notion of what to expect, but let me just give you some quick parameters that when you get a severance package, what does that mean? So there's two things. First of all, when you are terminated, there is a portion that is for the termination. For those people who have worked in an organization for more than 5 years, then there is a severance. So when you talk about the word severance, it really is focusing on the latter package. But when you're terminated, you can get termination pay and severance pay or just termination. So that's the distinction. So in the employment standards, and I'm based in Ontario, so I'm going to talk about that. There are prescribed legislators saying you work 1 year, you get this amount. You work 2 years, you get this amount. When you get to 5 years, that's when you look at the termination part plus the severance. If you have a contract with your company that specifically says, if I terminate you, this is all you get. That's it. That's a contract. But if there is no contract, then the severance part of it would be several factors when they determine how much they're going to pay you in the severance. Number one is, what kind of job do you have? Number two is, what's your industry like? Is it easy to find another job? If it's not, then the severance package will be longer. But if you could get a job like that, then your severance package would be lower. They also look at your age. How old are you? Because the older you are, you may not be able to work. If you're 55, people might not hire you again. But if you're 25 and you have those 5 years, they say, well, that person will get a job. It might take 3 months. But this person, it may take a year because of discrimination of age. So those are some of the key factors that people will determine. A rule of thumb, okay, and the rule of thumbs are meant to be broken, and the law now states that the rule of thumb is really being broken. But typically, it would have been 1 month for every year of service. So if you had 10 years, then you could get 10 months. Now, that's what your lawyer, I'm the one that's fired. That's what your lawyer would say. My lawyer, if I'm the one that's terminating, you would say, we're not going to offer 1 month for every year of service. We'll offer half of that, and then if you decide to discuss it, you'll saw it off. But that's what has typically been happening. So you can't say there's no black book that says this is the recipe to follow. It's a lot of different factors, and it's where you're located. If you're located in Toronto or in Grimsby, or you're in Saskatchewan or in BC, each one of those will have a different set of variables. And whenever I've had to terminate somebody, if I'm going to another province, I will consult with the lawyer in that province. So it's not just my Ontario lawyer, it'll be my Alberta lawyer.
Now, you mentioned something that I want to address right off the bat. I think everybody's heard a month gets you a year after you've been there a certain point. And if you've been there a really long time, that can be capped. But you also said the company's not necessarily going to offer you that right away. So there is a certain amount of negotiation that is expected, correct?
Yeah. Do you want me to elaborate?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So when you're terminated, you go into a room and they're supposed to be respectful, and they give you a letter. They should be advising you. So in the letters, there's a package, and you're frozen and you can't hear and absorb. So a good company should be saying, here's the package, and advise you to take it to a lawyer. If you don't, it's up to you, and it should be in writing that you are advised to seek personal counsel. It could be your family, it could be your financial planner or your lawyer. And then when you sign off, then you are saying, I agree to this. So a good company should never force you to sign off at the time, because you may have remorse and say, oh, by the way, they made me sign and I left the room. you can then argue with your lawyer that they made me sign, so it's not worth the signature. So when you take it, if it's reasonable to you, you probably will sign off. But if it looks like they didn't even recognize stuff, then take it to a lawyer. Some HR lawyers will give you a free consultation. And I know that some would say, well, you only worked there for 3 years. You're not entitled to severance. But the company could have been generous. Instead of what you were entitled to 3 weeks, they might have given you 6 weeks. But you think, wow, I want 3 months. And so what that lawyer might say was, if we argue for the 3 months that you want, you might start off at, 18 months, but then you're going to pay me for this amount. It's not worth it. So I know some people will say, I know this isn't right. This isn't fair, but I can't fight it. I can't pay for the lawyer fees. I'll settle. So oftentimes when people have only worked for, 3 to 5 years, oftentimes if the company was reasonable, it's probably not worth fighting. But if they really said, hey, you're only worth 2 weeks, here you go, you probably may make sense. So it doesn't hurt to seek somebody as a lawyer if they offer a free thing, and then you can decide whether financially it makes sense to wait it out or argue or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard both from different people. And, you may get some good advice from lawyers as well for other things that you can negotiate for. Like you may be able to negotiate for a computer or a phone that you've used.
Yeah.
If they haven't offered to, if you get a yearly bonus, you could argue that you should be getting some of that bonus, things like that. They may give you some pointers along those lines as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. So I mean, there is room for negotiation. Sometimes people don't. I knew of a person who was terminated, and it wasn't a fair settlement. And I told her that she definitely should go seek her lawyer. That they probably would give her some advice. And she finally said, "I have to settle. I need the money, and I can't afford to fight." So that's the sad thing about that.
Yeah. And I've also heard that, they want it over too, right? Nobody
Yeah,
really
yeah,
wants us hanging
yeah.
around a lot of time, but
Yeah.
uh,
And sometimes you can go back. You don't have to use a lawyer. You can just say, I understand I should be getting some severance pay. Could you review this?
mhm.
Or I'm comfortable signing, but I think, if it's possible for me to keep the computer, I'd be happy to do that. There are other things that should be in that termination letter. Your vacation should be paid out to you. Your people who have benefits should be paid the amount of benefit for the time of the termination, not the severance. So if they say, oftentimes when they terminate you, they say, okay, you're equivalent to, 16 weeks of payment. That 16 weeks should also include that you get benefits for those 16 weeks. So when you have a lieu of notice and they say it's 16 weeks, there should be a companion piece that says your benefits will continue during this period and end on X day, 16 weeks later in this case that I'm
Well,
giving.
that's some great information for that termination phase. And for anybody facing termination, things to expect. Like you said, you walk in the room, they give you a paper, you don't have to sign it. And for anybody who hasn't been terminated before, often those meetings are very quick.
Oh yeah.
They can last a minute. They're going to tell you, and then they want you to leave, and actually you want to leave too.
Yeah.
You want to take your information and go, and then get some more information about what you should do. Let's jump ahead. Did I get
Can I
everything
just
right
make
there?
one more thing? They
Sure.
should do it in a dignified way. So they should not be escorted. Like when they escort you at the door, it should be quiet. There should be no big kerfuffle or whatnot. So if you are made to feel that you were embarrassed, like they marched you right through the room and said, "Hey, goodbye," shake hands right in front of everybody, that could be an embarrassing situation. So do make sure that you are treated with dignity. They should be offering you a drive home if they feel you're unsettled, and you have that option, but they can give you a taxi to get you home or whatever. So just wanted to point that part of it out too.
That is an excellent point. And also, I mean, when I was let go, the company treated me with kindness and respect. And I've always appreciated that.
Yeah.
But also the way you leave matters too. It's the last time some people are going to see you, the last time the company deals with you. You never know when people are coming back. So this is actually a chance for you to look good in a bad situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just jump ahead to we've talked about severance. You're an HR expert. We want to get the most of your expertise. Let's talk about interviewing. People will be going for job interviews. What should people know about that?
I think you should be prepared. And I think that sometimes people don't know what that means. And so let me share what I think prepared means. Certainly bring your resume there so you know what you said. Do your homework. Find out who's going to be interviewing you so you're kind of prepared. Is there one person, two people? Is HR going to be there and the manager? Then look it up. Google. We have Google. Go look at the company. Find out what their mission, vision, and values are, what their philosophies. If they've got a site that talks about what the staff do, learn about that. Learn about some of the key people and particularly in the role you're playing. You want to show them that you did your homework, that you understand a little bit about the company, a little bit about what things are going to entail. When you're being interviewed, you'll often get questions that are behavioral. A good company will have a set of questions that really ask you to share an example to illustrate that you have good communication skills, that you have the ability to collaborate or be a team player, if that's the question. So think about what those questions are. Go Google. You'll see a host of behavioral questions. And if you don't know the answer, or if you didn't hear it quite right, seek to clarify. Let me understand the question. Are you asking about my skills and ability? Are you asking about, so just seek to clarify. Sometimes if you don't know the answer, you could say, that's a good question. Just give me a second to think about that. And so 10 seconds is not a terrible thing. It may feel like the end of the world as your heart's palpitating, but it's not the end of the world. It's better for you to get a good answer than just start babbling and not, I'm sorry, what did you say again? I'm not sure. It shows that you understand. So think about that, be prepared for those questions. Be yourself. Don't be what they expect you to be, because I want to hire you based on what you are. I don't want to hire you because what you think I am. And then the marriage, when you land the job, just is a disconnect. So be yourself, because you're going to have to live there for a while, right? So you might as well do something you want to do. The last thing is make sure you have questions. This isn't about them hiring you. This is about a ability to work together collaboratively, to understand each other. So even before you accept that interview, when you're applying to something, make sure it aligns with your values. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I find that the better fit is when your belief system aligns with your company. So if you're passionate about sustainability, work for a company that has that in their internet, saying we believe in sustainability. So figure out that match. Not perfectly aligned, but close enough to that. So that's the key. And so ask some of the key questions. One question you might ask is, so what's a typical day like in my role? Right? Because then you get a feel for, oh, that would be interesting. That's a match for me, right? And the other thing might be, what's the culture like here? And just blatantly say it. What is the culture like? So then you understand whether this kind of culture fits yours. And the other way too is to look at what kind of recognition they've got. Companies that are best workplaces in Canada, or best employees, they're companies that really strive on people. I'm a people person. I call my company People Bright, because I believe that we should make a culture where people feel valued for what they do. In other words, meaningful work, as well as a place where people enjoy working together. And you want to be in that because it's much more enjoyable coming to work where you love to work than going to a place where you feel you're an outsider, or you feel that people yell at you, or not sure which day you're supposed to talk to your boss, that's a recipe for get out of there. Get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, it's there are two interviews going on, right? You're interviewing them the same time they're interviewing you.
Yeah.
And sort of my rule of thumb on interviews, and I'm told I do well in interviews, is I treat them the way I treated blind dates back when I was dating, which is a long time ago. I would just say, I'm going to go and I'm going to have a good time no matter what. And if me having a good time isn't what they want, it's not meant to be. So, have fun and show the best of yourself. I know that's hard to say, but
I know that in my early days when I was, seeking jobs, I would always say, I felt they knew who I was. And if I'm hired, then I feel I knew who they were and it would be a good match. So if they didn't hire me, this is who I am, and if it's not a match, it's not a match.
Exactly. And here's my mom tip. Here's my mom's tip for interviews. It's great, actually. Write down all of your strengths, put it on a piece of paper, and read it over and over and over again before you go in the interview. So you're just reinforcing yourself. You're being your own best friend then.
That actually is a great tip, because I think too often we don't brag. This is a time to brag. I don't know you have these skill sets if you don't tell me. So you do, as your mom tip's great, to write them down so that you can say it. And don't feel afraid. Don't be afraid to write down what people like, what you want to say, because if they ask you a question, okay, just a second, I just want to refer to my note here. There's no like, it's not like an exam where you can't bring in your little cheat sheet. You can bring in your cheat sheet, and the cheat sheet could be about, your strengths, and it could be about the company. I heard this about the company, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more. Right.
I think there's one more pro tip, and then we're going to wrap it up. Here's my pro tip from being on both sides of it. Send them a thank you note as quickly as you can afterwards. Maybe not quickly, but make sure you, in a very timely manner, you thank them for the interview.
Kudos, because I think a lot of younger people really don't understand that power of the thank you. And it can be an email sometimes, and I've done it where I've handwritten that note and given it to the receptionist. I know we're in virtual reality, but in the olden days when we went, I would sit there and I would write the note and I would just hand it to the receptionist. Please give this to so-and-so.
That is a classy move. People should remember that one. Hilda, just quickly, tell me a little bit about your company. What do you guys do at your company?
So People Bright really focuses on small to medium-sized employers who really can't afford a HR in-house. We provide that expertise as a consultant to come in and set up your foundations and make it run smoothly. Because a lot of people lose a lot of sleep because people problems are around, and we like to minimize the risk that you have when it comes to managing your people.
And one thing that every one of those companies should do, if they are thinking about terminating people, they should talk to someone like you, if not you in person, because that will make a difference as to how they are perceived in the world.
Right. We can offer how to handle it, what is a fair opportunity, a fair settlement. I mean, you may want to go to a lawyer, but you may want to come to us first to get some advice and then work that through. Thank you.
Well, there you go. You don't necessarily have to go to a lawyer. You can go to HR groups, private HR companies, and they will be able to give you some good advice too. Hilda, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I think you helped a lot of people today.
Thank you, Greg, for having me. And I'm always happy to share my knowledge to help others with the difficulties and the successes sometimes they have with their HR.